Hey guys, Jamie here, founder of Chronic Hope. I'm here with Katya, who is from the UK, hosts an amazing Instagram profile that helps people with chronic illness learn how to travel in a better way, reduces the fear of traveling, gives heaps of tips and even recipes and such amazing content. Hi, how are you, Katya?
Hey. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. I have been so excited about this podcast for a couple weeks ever since we talked. We actually met on Instagram, which I love.
Yeah.
I love that we can just network on Instagram and just meet people from all over the world. And I love what
Definitely.
you're
Really
doing.
supportive.
So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love that. So, um, can you just start by maybe telling our audience a little bit about yourself and what got you into, I guess, doing what you're doing and helping the community?
hmm so yeah, I am from London. I was diagnosed with multiple chronic illnesses around 2 years ago now. And when I was diagnosed, there wasn't, I mean, my consultant sent me in lots and lots of different directions because there's so many different symptoms to manage. And so I was looking for all of those resources in lots and lots of different places. And it took me a long time to kind of just get used to daily life with the chronic illnesses that I have. And I just thought that maybe I could make the process easier for other people who have recently been diagnosed, and just have everything in one place, make it more streamlined. So that was for daily management, but also I've always loved the idea of traveling. All my savings would always go on holidays um, during work and stuff. And I, as soon as I was diagnosed, I was kind of so uncertain as to whether I would even be able to travel with the chronic illnesses that I have. I was looking online, looking for different blogs and just resources that could tell me it's fine, you can travel, or just tips to, I don't know, adjust the itinerary to travel. And I couldn't really find that. So I spent about a good part of like 18 months just managing daily life, just working from home. And every evening I just research heaps um, to prepare for my travels. And yeah, so I've just basically created the Instagram when we were traveling. It got it got cut short because of coronavirus, but we were meant to be traveling indefinitely for maybe 18 months if we could. It was only 3, but yeah, halfway through our travels, I just decided to create the Instagram as a resource to give other people insights and tips, and yeah, just resources that it is possible, just maybe in a bit of a different way, but yeah.
So you were going to be traveling for 18 months and working remotely
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
chronic illness.
yeah.
Wow.
Or I mean, we actually quit our jobs to
Okay.
travel. Um,
Wow.
and yeah, because we'd saved up for a long time to do so.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah. That's amazing. Like that's so brave to be like, you know what, I'm quitting. I'm gonna travel. I mean, that's brave for like a person with normal health, but then add a chronic illness on top of that. I mean, I can definitely relate because that was a bit what happened to me with my move to Sydney.
yeah, because you've moved from the States, right?
Yeah, so I moved from America to Sydney about 2.5 years ago, and I remember when I arrived, I had no job, no place to live, and no friends.
Scary.
And
Yeah.
I was like, and I at the time I still had chronic fatigue syndrome, so I think, but I guess I think sometimes maybe you feel this when you have that desire, that need inside of you to like get out there. It's like that gives you the
Yeah,
courage to kind of get
yeah.
out there.
The
So,
travel bug.
um, ideal travel destination. And so, where were you, and where were you planning on going?
So we ended up going to Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, and then, well, Indonesia for only like 3 days, so doesn't really count, but until it got cut short. But yeah, so we did 2 months in Thailand, 2 months, no, 1 month in Cambodia, and then a couple of weeks in Malaysia. Um, and we wanted to also go to the Philippines. Um, all of Indonesia, and then Australia, New Zealand, and I don't know, just kind of see how my health was and just whether it would get, how long we could go for, kind of how things panned out. But
Yeah, and that was cut short by COVID, obviously,
yeah.
which was, I'm sure, very devastating.
Yes.
So the first thing that pops to my mind when you say, "Oh, we were in like Southeast Asia, etc.," is I have dietary restrictions, and I think a lot of people in the community have them as well. So like
Yes, me too.
gluten, dairy, sugar, soy, like all these things.
Yeah.
And that's probably my greatest reluctance in traveling is like I have the energy, but I do have those intolerances. So how did you manage that?
So I kind of, well, before I even left, I like set my expectations lower for the range of foods that I was going to be able to eat, because I've literally got like 50 food allergies. So it's very, very limited. But before I left, and I'm surprised that I never did this before in my life, because it's always been difficult, just even in the UK in restaurants. I put together some allergy cards that had all my allergens. I laminated them, but then also with images as well, just so it was easy to communicate. And I did end up translating them, but the English ones just worked well just with the images. And that helped enormously, because trying to communicate like 50 allergies to a chef like every single time, it can be just cause so much anxiety. So it definitely relieved the anxiety from just like communicating them to the kitchen.
And what was the response like from like the kitchen and the servers when you would show them this card? Were they mostly understanding or?
Yeah, usually. And if not, I would just, I mean, if they didn't have the stuff on the menu, my staples were just rice, and if they had like broccoli that they could boil for me, some broccoli.
Yeah, that's your that's your go-to. That's the go-to. Rice and broccoli and carrots.
Thailand, it was a lot easier to eat, but Cambodia, the options were more limited. I found so.
Yeah. That's really good. That's actually kind of surprising me, because I was actually in France one time. Like this was like maybe 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, and I tried to order something off the menu and be like, "Hey, can you like not put like some sauce with dairy?" And they were like, "Oh, sorry, we can't do that." Like the chef literally wouldn't do it.
Yeah, sometimes they get really entitled and just don't want to.
French. I love the French.
Odd places, I did have some people that, but we kind of asked before we went in, even, so that the person that's kind of I don't know what you call them, the host or whatever, that's trying to get you to come into the restaurant, we'd kind of, I don't know, look at the menu and be like, oh, would you even be able to do this if we sat down? So kind of just before you even go in.
And that's even just a good tip for like normal life, having that allergy card. Like
definitely, it helped me so much, because I tested it in London before I left, and I was just like, why haven't I done this before?
Do you have a template? Do you have a template that you have put up on a blog or anything for that, or?
A template, yes, I have actually. It's on the link in my bio on my Instagram.
That's amazing. And guys, we will link to Katya's resources where she'll have that template. That could be super helpful for with your guys' allergies and when traveling, when just living normal life. What was the process? What's the process then that you go through to, and that you would maybe recommend to start organizing or planning a trip?
So yeah, basically just making sure that you have like enough time to research and prepare, and so choosing a place that suits you, in terms of like the climate, the activities, making sure that you've got enough things to do there, especially if you're things that don't involve moving super frequently, or too far, like apart from each other. So something with like lots of stuff for you to do in that place. And then when you're planning your itinerary, making sure that you structure in rest days, maybe breaking up the journey if it's like a long flight, like stopping over somewhere and having a rest day in transit. But then also when you plan out your activities over, say, a couple of weeks, just making sure that you have a handful of activities, and then in between each activity there's like 1 or 2 days in between as contingency, just kind of because obviously it can be very flexible. Like you don't know if you're going to be okay on the day, or you might need to cancel, you might need to postpone. So just kind of, yeah, making sure that you've got kind of that contingency in, and you're not packing everything in and then getting really burnt out. And then I'd say like communicating with the person or people that you're traveling with, just making sure that they're really aware of your conditions. And if you're not able to communicate with a stranger or something, they can kind of step in and communicate it for you. But also just, as I was talking about the itinerary, if there is a day that you have to suddenly cancel an activity, kind of just having the discussion beforehand so that they know, oh, okay, you can't go, but we can't actually cancel it, so you'll stay at home, and I'll go out on the activity and won't feel bad for leaving you. And then just kind of as well linked to that, because it can feel a bit like disheartening not being able to suddenly go on something that you wanted to do, and so just kind of changing your perspective when you are at home, or when I say home, I mean like back at the hotel or something, and just kind of changing the perspective from like, oh, I'm missing out on this activity, to this is really good for my health, it's important for my self-care, and you're prepping some activities that you can do just like from the hotel room, just making sure you've got a book or TV shows or like movies downloaded, and just changing the perspective.
And so with all of that, were there particular instances while you were traveling where you had put these things in place and were then very thankful to have them in place?
Well, in terms of what all of these things I've just mentioned, or in terms of like missing out?
No, the things you mentioned, like when you were traveling in like Thailand, Malaysia, etc. Had you implemented these things, scheduled the days, and saw really good results? And
yeah, definitely. So what we did is just make sure we kind of researched so much in advance that we kind of only chose, like, I don't know, I love islands and the heat's really good for my symptoms. So islands is kind of just basically we were just island hopping the whole time. But we just made sure that we went to like only the best islands that were most beautiful, and most accessible for kind of getting around, and didn't have to get mopeds everywhere, because I can't sit on a moped. So just kind of, and we made sure that because we wanted to go to more islands, we just factored in obviously a lot more time, like we had the time, so we'd be a couple of weeks on each island at least, and then we'd kind of be like, right, we want to do, I don't know, this many snorkel tours or this many activities, and then we just really flexibly book them in. So we definitely implemented everything kind of as I've said.
that's good.
And we ended up actually, I mean, for us, we like booked flights, and we ended up kind of changing and actually choosing a different, like staying on one of the islands for a lot longer, because it was our favorite, so we ended up staying for like 6 weeks instead of moving even more, because it was just so ideal for us. So kind of, I don't know, it depends on how long you're going for, or how long people are going for, but for us, I found that it was in that kind of scenario, it's better just not book the flights, because the prices don't really change, and it's just almost better to keep it flexible.
Did you have any like crashes or anything while you were traveling, and how did you manage that?
Yes. I mean, I would just, there'd be days that I just couldn't go. I'd just be at home all day, back at the hotel or hostel. And I just make sure that I was just watching Netflix, or just there'd be evenings that Rob, so I went with my partner, he'd just go out without me, but I did get that FOMO, the fear of missing out kind of feeling, and actually I didn't really implement. It was something that I learned along the way, that I kind of got really upset, so I can't go, like I because I got really upset, I kind of realized, like, right, it's all about changing your mindset when you are missing out, because it is really upsetting when you can't go.
Yeah, it
Um,
totally is. Yeah, 100%. Like I've felt that, and I found it also upsetting not only for myself, but it's like you feel like you're letting other people down as well. I don't know if
yeah,
you felt that.
yeah,
It was like
definitely.
for
Yeah,
me, it actually wasn't even as much about me as it was. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm letting this person down.
yeah,
Whereas,
because they've got to go on their own or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
and it's
yeah,
letting go of that guilt of
yes,
and just being like, you know what? Like, I'm the best thing I can do is let them do them and I'll do me. There was
exactly.
a
Yeah.
time when I was in Hawaii with my sisters and my mom, and they went for a bushwalk or a hike, and I couldn't go. Or I think
Yeah,
I went part of it. I do actually remember I went part of it, and then we got halfway, and I was like, I can't.
yeah,
And so I
yeah.
went back to the car and had a nap. And there was another time where they went for a walk and there was a beach at the foot of the trail. And so I just laid on the beach while they went for a walk, which was actually really nice. But,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and I found that actually what you're saying about communicating your
Hmm.
needs to the people that you're traveling with is really important, because it's like having that conversation of like, I actually want you to be able to do what you want to do, but I
Hmm.
also know that I need to look after myself, and
Yeah,
having that conversation of like, this is how much I can do, etc., etc.
yeah.
And
Rather than just kind of people please and just not say anything and then just make your symptoms worse and flare up like
yeah,
days after.
because
Yeah,
ultimately, and probably with your partner as well, is he wants you to communicate your needs, right? Like, as hard it
definitely.
is
Yeah.
as it is sometimes, it's like, no, like, you're worth having your needs considered, and it's actually better for everyone if you don't go do that thing and be act tired and then have to come back early and all these things. Not act tired, I mean
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
be
Hmm.
exhausted and then the next day you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it.
Definitely. Yeah.
So what are maybe some other tips that we haven't talked about yet that you would definitely recommend for people traveling with a chronic illness? I know you like I've seen some stuff on your Instagram where you've like suggested a mobility kind of card to give people.
Hmm. Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So just um well, that's just in terms of asking for help. If you've recently been diagnosed or you just haven't talked with strangers about your chronic illnesses, which I mean, I didn't really, it can be really difficult to just ask, I don't know, whether it's for like the wheelchair, ambulatory wheelchair support in the airport, or just like asking a stranger to lift your bags, like because your travel companion is somewhere else or something. Just kind of asking somebody for the help. I find just like having a card that just explains the condition that you have um, can just kind of help, especially if, I don't know, suddenly you're really brain foggy or you're just unable to communicate to them. Just having the card maybe translated into the languages of the place you're going to definitely really helps. But also, I've kind of been challenged a few times. They shouldn't, but I've been challenged like on the airline. Um, I always carry a doctor letter with the diagnosis, the diagnoses that I have, just because in case anyone does challenge you, I mean, it is an invisible illness, like I look completely fine. Um, and although, yeah, there is a lot of awareness, more awareness going into them now, like a lot of people just aren't aware. So having the doctor's letter as like a form of proof, or just back up why you need the wheelchair or why you need the support can also help. Just also put your mind at ease that you're not going to just be challenged and then not even be able to get the support that you need because they just don't believe.
How do you like internally? I don't know. For me, like I'm not a very confrontational person or like assertive person. So
Neither. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you internally, I guess, sort of manage that when someone challenges you, like, well, internally and externally?
Um, I mean, I used to get a huge amount of anxiety about it. It started actually when I was diagnosed, asking for a seat on the tube in the London Underground, and I just couldn't do it. I'd be in like excruciating pain, but I because I looked fine, I couldn't even do it. And so I actually internally had lots of cognitive behavioural therapy sessions, where you do these experiments. So you kind of talk through the thought processing that I kind of just felt like it wasn't justified, because I don't know, I didn't want to explain the medical condition, but then I felt that they were just going to judge me. So just kind of cognitive behavioural therapy, it's all about changing your thought patterns and just kind of rationalizing why you need it, like not trying to read people's minds. That really helped me. So that was my first like step of being more assertive about it. And it took quite a few months, and there were weeks that I would just still just kind of suffer and wouldn't even ask for the seat. But finally I was able to, and I think that just definitely helped, just as a basis for when I was then traveling, being able to just justify it. Just justify the need for the seat or the whatever I'm asking for.
And you found, like, when you finally did start to ask, were people pretty responsive?
On the so I mean, there'd be times I was even wearing like my cervical collar, because my neck subluxes, and so I'd be wearing my cervical collar in the tube, and I'd ask, and people would just like look at you and look away. So sometimes people can be really horrible, but they have this campaign in London called it basically is a blue badge that you can wear that says "Please offer me a seat." So I'd always have that with me, and then rather than show like a medical letter or something, in that case I'd like kind of flash the badge, like I don't know, if I didn't really always want to wear it, but in the situations I need it, I'd be like, "Oh, please, can I sit down? I've got a medical condition." And from probably like 99% of the time they were responsive.
That's so good, that medical badge idea.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I don't know what it's like in different places, but
I've definitely had conversations with people in America who've had, like, for example, parking in the disabled parking.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And I mean, where they can walk, they look fine, but really they actually need to be parking there, not that far, etc.
And people were just like confronting them and being
blah, blah, blah. It's just it just brings, like, we're just getting into this whole massive issue of the lack of awareness around invisible conditions, and like I was having a discussion with my counselor the other day about like just how frequent, like how many people are actually physically suffering but you can't see it. Like it's quite a large proportion of the population. And even we were chatting and he's like, "Oh yeah, I have this ringing in my ears and I've had it for X amount of years." I had no idea. I wouldn't have known unless he told me, right? But and like, how many of us have hidden conditions that we aren't, that people can't see? So I love that, and I think the encouragement as well, just what you're saying, is really to have that courage to advocate for yourself. And I think what I love as well about what you're saying in your journey is that it's like, you're obviously not that person that's going to act entitled to all of the special treatment because of your disabilities, and I'm not either, or sorry, because of your conditions, and I'm not either, but it's okay to be assertive, and it's okay to say, no, like, I have the right to be considered, and there's plenty of healthy people that can stand up in the tube, like.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So was there any other like tips that you could share in terms of traveling or just everyday life?
I mean, in terms of traveling, I won't go into them now because I'll just be literally listing them, but I've got heaps of packing lists. which are just useful to, or not even just packing lists, but things to do before you go, like admin wise, that I've got on one of my upcoming videos that will be on IGTV and soon on
Yeah.
YouTube. But yeah, apart from the lists, I think I might have been through most of the stuff.
I love that, and we'll definitely share all of the links to all of the resources that you have available, to your website, to Instagram, etc., etc. For those listening, she has an amazing Instagram TV series just offering tips for traveling, and you also have like amazing photos, amazing recipes. It's all amazing.
Thank you.
My last question is, so your Instagram handle is Positively Chronic Travels.
Okay.
And you obviously kind of have a wide range of conditions that does have quite an impact on your everyday life. How do you stay positive with all of that?
I mean, yeah, life is definitely more challenging. I've definitely had my fair share of like bad days mental health wise, because just living with lots of conditions, it can be very, very frustrating, in constant pain, and just feeling like your symptoms are affecting everyday life. But I think for me, what helped kind of just like as a milestone when I was diagnosed was acceptance,
Yeah.
because there is kind of like a grief from your old life that old life as in like if the symptoms have suddenly kind of just debilitated, if your symptoms have suddenly made you less able to do things that you might have used to do, that you just kind of realize that you just can't do anymore. So
Yeah.
just kind of accepting that that you do have these conditions, that maybe there is no cure for them, but that you can still kind of empower yourself in just looking after yourself and just changing your routine and your daily life, and I don't know, maybe lots of factors in your life that make it easier for you to manage your daily life and feel more comfortable and in less pain. So just changing your perspective of like, even if it's like very, very small things, just what you can do, however small they really are, and just not striving to be like able-bodied again, but just being satisfactory with the days maybe that the flares aren't so bad, because I mean also it's a difficult process. It sounds a lot maybe easier said than done,
Yeah.
um, but just also gratitude kind of alongside acceptance, I'd say. Just gratitude just for what your body can do, not criticizing yourself, feeling like your body's a failure or whatever for all the symptoms. That definitely shifted my mindset a lot. And just in terms of positivity, I studied psychology at university.
Oh,
And so
that makes sense.
there's such thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called neuroplasticity. And basically, your brain thought patterns can be trained. And anyone who's experienced like depression or negative thought cycles, it's really, really, really hard to get out of. Like once you're in that hole or that state, it's so difficult to get out of, because you literally have to retrain your brain neurons. So basically, I don't know, a good analogy is imagining a ski slope, with lots of tracks of just people skiing in the same places, and they're all the negative thoughts, and people just the thoughts going in the same tracks. But by changing your thought patterns, trying to think, replacing the negative thoughts with more positive ones, it's basically like, I don't know, a huge dump of powder snow, and then you can rewire your neurons to think in the more positive ones, and the more positive you think, the more like the neurons will keep going down there, like the I don't know, skis going down there, the slopes. So yeah, I think that's a really good analogy to if you are looking to kind of just change your thought processes and just help with pain management, because when you're in pain, it also kind of releases lots of hormones and neurotransmitters that kind of links to stress, and that can actually just increase your pain and just kind of also like hypersensitize yourself to the pain and make it even worse, and just everything will just flare even more. So yeah, strategies like meditation, just to kind of like clear the mind, mindfulness, focusing on like the present moment, and changing your thoughts with techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy can also just help with pain management. And yeah, just kind of it's not a cure whatsoever, but I definitely don't want to preach that, oh, just think positive and your illness will go away.
Oh, no.
Like, I'm not saying that. But it just definitely helps change your outlook on your life, on your situation, and just just stay in a better headspace and just enjoy life, like no matter how difficult it is.
That's really good what you're sharing. The whole idea of neuroplasticity, I've heard it before from my own psychologist, and I've never been able to explain it as well as you just explained it. So thank you. One of the things that my counselor had me do with that in changing those negative thought patterns is I had to recite this mantra every day, like, I am beautiful, I am valuable, I am worthy. Do you have that one?
Not exactly those, but just affirmations, just reiterating these things to
and it changes
it. He was like, you're gonna think it's crazy, it's not gonna do anything for the first, I don't know, week, but if you keep doing it, then you're actually gonna notice. And I started to notice my body would have a physical response when I started affirming myself. Like I could feel physically my body reacting in a positive way. And so that's a total encouragement for our listeners today. Look into neuroplasticity. We will have some resources available around that as well. And I think as well what I love about your journey, and an encouragement that I would just give to the community, is for those living with chronic conditions, like not everyone is necessarily going to recover fully, and that's okay. And also it's like you've obviously approached it in a almost like a methodical way of like, this is what I can't control, but this is what I can control, you know? And like I can control my actions. I can write cards to explain to people what my condition is. I can do this. And it's like, and that's also a way of, it's almost empowering yourself to be better and improve. And I love that, because that's, I don't know, I think that's part of the key to the journey, is accepting what you can't control, and then what you can control, trying to optimize that as much as possible, if that makes sense. Is like, like I can control this, so I'm gonna, I guess, do this as much as I can to the point that I can, and then that's optimized. I don't know if that makes sense, but
definitely. No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing, and honestly, it's been really great to have you on the podcast. And again, for those listening, we'll have links up to Katya's Instagram, her website, and there'll be heaps of resources for when everyone can start traveling again after COVID.
Hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Yes.
All right, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Take care.